Hello, my name is Dan Skipdown, and this is my review of Battle of the Sexes, starring Steve Carell and Emma Stone. Obviously, Emma Stone portrays um, tennis great Billie Jean King, and this is a movie about her trying to kind of get respect for women's tennis players, and women in general, sports athletes in general, because of the lack of pay and what they get for prizes in tennis matches and so forth, and championships. Is like a disparate 8-to-1 disparity of pay rate in women's tennis and men's tennis at the time. This takes place in the mid 70s, around 75, 76, in there somewhere. And so she decides she's going to form her own tennis foundation, or her own tennis league. And so the Virginia Slims Tennis League is formed, and they're sponsored by a local cigarette company called Virginia Slims. So they end up getting some money, and this is how the movie gets going. And then, of course, they have a traveling group of people, like hairstylists and makeup people and whatnot. And she falls kind of in love with this hairstylist played by Andrea Riseborough. Now, of course, she's married at the time, and so it's kind of one of those deals where she doesn't want it to get out that she's messing around with the hairstylist while she's married to her husband. And then we also have Margaret Court, who's married with a child, and she's on the tour as well, but she's the only one with a husband and a baby, and they travel around with the team. She starts seeing some of the things going on between Billie Jean and the hairstylist. On the other side, we have Bobby Riggs, portrayed by Steve Carell, who's married. His family, she's got a lot of money. They got a nice big house. But he's not happy in his job, and he kind of is I guess you would call it a gambler, and he does some pretty crazy high stakes gambling. Like one scene, he ends up winning this guy's Rolls Royce while he's playing tennis versus this guy with two dogs, and they put two chairs in there, and the guy still loses to Bobby Riggs, and he ends up losing his Rolls Royce. But he had promised his wife, Priscilla, played by Elizabeth Shue, that he would stop gambling. Of course, he doesn't stop gambling because he doesn't really have a whole lot going for himself. And he used to be a champion tennis player back in the day, but now he's kind of just like a working man, and he doesn't like the life that he's living. You know what I mean? And so, with the encouragement of his friends, he decides, well, he wants to play Billie Jean King in a kind of a special celebrity kind of tennis match. Well, she turns him down, so he goes to Margaret Court. And of course, he destroys her in that match, and then that makes it worse for Billie Jean, because then he's going around saying he's the #1 women's tennis player because he beat the best tennis player. So this whole thing finally gets set up, but Billie Jean's like, well, I want control of the venue. I want control of all of this stuff. And he's just this laughing stock. He's going around dressing up like Little Bo Peep and doing all these games and gags and stuff like that with giant tennis rackets and this. Like he's got to beat Billie Jean King in this celebrity tennis match. And of course, Billie Jean, she's all about trying to get the women's rights and trying to make people realize that women's sports can be competitive and that women should be paid a decent amount of money. So when he offers $100,000 for this match, she has to take it because that's a lot of money at the time in the 70s. That's $100,000, quite a bit of money. So this is it's about women's lib. It's about trying to establish a name for yourself, that you're not just a tennis player. You're a person that cares about women's rights, and and Bobby Riggs is one of those kind of guys. Is he finished with these games? Is his life just going to be a bunch of fun and games all the time? I mean, that's the kind of what we're dealing with. We're dealing with two sides of the coin. One person's trying to be taken seriously. The other person, all they want is do goofy gambling and have fun and games. And his wife wants him to be serious. taken seriously instead of being some just laughing stock and whatnot. So we have these two sides of this coin in this film, and we go back and forth between the two sides until we finally get this tennis match. And of course, the tennis match lives up to the hype of what it is because it's a great tennis match. And if you know the history of the Battle of the Sexes tennis match, you know who wins and who loses, and you know what it means for women's rights that have come out of this tennis match, and women's pay and whatnot, and the respect that women get in athletics and the Olympics and different sports that go on. So I'll tell you what, I love this film. I'm a big sports fan, and I love movies about sports, but I also love movies about true sports stories. And this is, as a kid, I knew all about this because I was just a young kid at the time, but this is a big deal when I was growing up. This is a big story, the Battle of the Sexes. And I'll tell you what, I think Emma Stone, she's coming off her Oscar win last year for La La Land. I think she's going to have a very good chance of being nominated again. Steve Carell's been nominated once or twice as well, for Foxcatcher and whatnot. So I think you might get some Oscar contention for this film because of what it means and what it stands for, but also that it's a really good film and the acting is top notch. So for Battle of the Sexes, I give it a big C. My name is Skip, and this has been my review of Battle of the Sexes.